Hi guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. This week's episode is a sort of a quick deep dive, or sort of shallow dive, as I say, into the world of industrial metal. I had missed this one, thought I'd already done it. I had to go back through the many episodes and realise I've mentioned it in passing, but I've never talked about it. Now, it's one of those subgenres that not everyone is going to enjoy and not everyone is going to really get, but I dig it, and I have done for some time because of the I came through it to it in a different way than other people. So firstly, let's think what is industrial heavy metal or industrial metal. So because you get industrial music and there's industrial metal, we're going to talk about sort of the crossover, which is industrial metal. Now, what it is it's a form of music that's been around since the early 80s, getting very popular in the sort of late 80s to early 90s, and then dissipating off and sort of just now sitting in the background a bit. And there's a reason for that, because industrial music is a mixture of sampling, heavy, rhythmic, almost tribal-esque rhythms, usually quite hard-hitting political subject matter, often with a lyrical content that is quite challenging. There's no widdly-diddly clean guitar solos. If you imagine listening to Doom, but a little bit faster. So and a bit more sort of angular. It's certainly more aggressive. It's one of the most aggressive forms of the metal genres, even though, you know, of course you have your extreme metals, but it still has some form of melody, whereas a lot of the industrial stuff is exactly how it sounds on the packet. Imagine the sound of industry, right? It's heavy, it's sweaty, it's powerful, it's constant. Industry is constant. It's dark. It's got all those sort of elements. Now, you might say, but Tony, you don't like sampling. Well, actually, I at an early age, as I like all forms of music, but as an early age, at the early 80s, I really got into the early sampling stuff that the New York first wave of rap of hip hop bands was doing, like the electro stuff. So African Bombata and Grandmaster Flash, all that sort of stuff, where it was really interesting and it wasn't just boats and hoes, and it was a message, right? And they were using all sorts of different techniques to make music because they didn't have instruments as such, because they couldn't afford them, and they also wanted to use what was coming through in the 80s. There was the technology to do so, because at the beginning of the 80s you started getting the electronic music and the sampling music, and bands began finding machines that could take sounds, cut them up, and then sort of put them into interesting rhythmic devices. Now, with industrial metal, a lot of the lyrical content is quite short and sharp, and it's cut up, and it's usually interlaced with sort of like, maybe political, like people making speeches cut up. It's other people's music cut up and squeezed around a bit. It's one guitar loop, recorded and then pushed through the entire song. There isn't much change. You don't get a lot of interesting rhythmic time changes in industrial music, because you can imagine in industry, the machines that bang out things like minting coins or pounding steel, they don't change rhythm. It's the same thing all the way through. So it's basically what industrial music is. And it first started for me, yes, obviously liking the early hip hop sampling, and the Beastie Boys and things like that. But I came through it through its originators, which in my opinion is Killing Joke. Killing Joke makes stark, dark, cold, arrhythmic, angular, sort of political pieces of music, which are usually, to the uninitiated, quite difficult to sort of digest. They have this rhythmic, how do I say it? This sort of very much a tribal sound, and there's no guitar solos. And this is the thing, there is industrial music out there that does have guitar solos, and there are different offshoots of industrial music, but I think industrial metal itself is not that way. Now we're going to talk about the bands that are ones to watch out for and the albums to look for in the second part of the show, but firstly we're just going to talk about the type of music that it is. Now, a lot of the post-punk bands, so there was like Cocksparrow and Throbbing Gristle and Killing Joke and Crass to some extent. A lot of those narco bands coming through the UK in sort of 79 to 82 to 83, around that point, they were looking to change something different, to be different. And this is the interesting thing about industrial metal, is it's one of the very last real sort of forefronts of different music in the genres, the metal genres, really, because if every metal genre, this truly is one form of heavy guitar and rhythm, an image, but industrial metal is a whole different ball game. It's a almost completely different audience base, because it does polarize. There are traditional metalheads out there and who just won't go near it because it's too close to electronic music, sampling. There are other people that absolutely, who come from the heavy hip hop and sampling world, that dive into industrial music because it sort of straddles both worlds. As I told you, I live in that world where I really enjoy it. Obviously, sometimes you've got to take a breath from it, like anything. When it's the same kind of rhythm for 60 to 70 minutes of an album, you do sort of get to the point where you go, okay, like, sort of what's new here, what's different. But you do that, and every now and again you'll just go back to an album and a track, and you'll hear a little bit of sampling that you didn't quite hear before, or a riff that was like just you'd missed, or some outrageous, amazing bass line. Now, people think that, and people do, and I do think that Killing Joke was the sort of pioneers of this, but I actually think that Peel, or Public Image Limited, with John Lydon and Jar Wobble and those people, I think they sort of brought it to the fore, because with Peel's first couple of albums, John was trying to pull away from his traditional 1, 2, 3, 4 punk image and find something different to call his own, because what he thought was his and his image and his ideas, even though punk is a universal thing, not an individual thing, I think he felt that it'd been sort of hijacked and taken away. And so by sort of diving into the dub scene, and again, there's a lot of dub in industrial metal music, dub and sampling and reggae and all these sort of really interesting rhythms that he was mixing up and playing around with. He does say that he invented hip-hop. That's a tough call, right? I don't know if I could go down that route, but I think really, if we're going to look at the origins of the music, I think we're going to look at sort of the second wave of punk out of the UK, sort of 79. I said 79 onwards, so Peel and Killing Joke and Throbbing Gristle and quite a few. The Cure, for instance, the Cure's Pornography album, I would say, is sort of proto-industrial music there. There's even to some extent some of the sort of the interesting drug-fueled musical moments of say Pink Floyd and those sort of latter day prog bands, some of their stuff would be proto-industrial, I would think, definitely ELP, for instance, because it's a single piece of rhythm that keeps going and going and going and going, and I think they get onto this sort of like whacked out jam, and there you go, right? So, as I said, it's not for the faint-hearted. If you are unsure about whether you're going to like it or not, there are the suggestions I'm going to give you in the second half may give you an idea of where to go, because obviously you're not going to jump straight into something, unless you want to dive into something really heavy. There are lighter versions of music of this particular subgenre, but as I said, I think we'll stick to the traditional stuff, and then we will sort of talk about my favourites of the genre, because there are a couple out there. One particular album which has always fascinated me, and one particular band which has always been on my mind, because I came across them sort of by accident 30 years ago, and it was one of those moments where someone said to you at a gig, "Oh, you like this band? Look, you like Killing Joke? You should go and listen to this band." And I grabbed their first album and was like, "What are you talking about? This is awful." And then I sort of persisted and went and before streaming and all that sort of stuff, I just basically went to the library, would you believe it, and took out a couple of cassettes by this particular band, and whoa, it blew my socks off. Did it change my mind on what music I find really fascinating? No, it just adds to the arsenal of my genres that I enjoy, and you do hear the influence of this band that I'm going to talk about in our second half everywhere, and live. And I've had the opportunity of seeing this particular band live a few times, and needless to say, it's an outrageous experience. So I'm going to sort of come into the end of this particular part of the show. I'm going to refresh my warm cup of tea. Hang on. Yeah, I'm drinking away from the mic to upset people. And we will talk about those albums that I think are definitely, and the bands that are influential within the genre. And we'll see. I'm guaranteeing you now, if you've stuck with this so far with me, you are going to know at least a handful of the bands that I'm going to mention, and you're going to think to yourself, I didn't really think of them as industrial. And I think it's because they cross-pollinate, and they move outside their boundaries of what could be considered the one true industrial metal sound. And it's a very difficult sound to sort of understand, to sort of put in a box, because it's just so diverse, and it's so crazy, and so in fact it's one of the most musical of the subgenres. Has the most musicality, I think, because when they produce it, they aren't just looking at guitars, drums, bass, vocals. They're looking at so much more texture and drive, and I think that's what gives it a little bit more fun to listen to. Anyway, that's me rabbiting on for this side. I will talk to you on the other side after the ads, and we'll talk about the album and the bands that I think you should listen to. Bye for now.
If you're looking for plump lips that last, you need to know about Juvederm lip fillers. With Juvederm Volbella XC and Juvederm Ultra XC, your lip look, whether it's subtle or bold, can last up to 1 full year with optimal treatment and no additional maintenance. Find a licensed specialist and see if it's right for you at Juvederm.com today. That's JUVEDERM.com. Add fullness to lips in adults over 21 with Juvederm Volbella XC or Juvederm Ultra XC. Do not use if you have severe allergies or a history of severe allergic reactions, or if you're allergic to lidocaine or the proteins used in Juvederm. Tell your doctor if you have a history of scarring or taking medicines that decrease the body's immune response or that can prolong bleeding. Common side effects include injection site redness, swelling, pain, tenderness, firmness, lumps, bumps, bruising, discoloration, or itching. As with all fillers, there's a rare risk of unintentional injection into a blood vessel, which can cause vision abnormalities abnormalities, blindness, stroke, temporary scabs, or scarring. For full, important safety information, visit Juvederm.com.
Spring? Is that you? Warmer temps mean new Allbirds styles. Meet the Superlight Collection, the lightest ever shoes from Allbirds, now in fresh colors. These must-have travel shoes have a lighter-than-air feel and a barely-there fit that made them the most packable shoes ever. Plus, they're comfy right out of the box. That means more comfort and less baggage. Experience how Allbirds is redefining comfort. Visit allbirds.com and use code SUPER24 for a free pair of socks with a purchase of $48 or more. That's ALLBIRDS.com, code SUPER24.
Welcome back, guys, to part 2 of Heavy Metal Tones with me, Tony Evans, your podcast host. Now, this is part 2 of our dive into industrial metal music. As I said in the first part, it's quite a diverse and interesting subgenre that bleaches into almost into the norms in some respects. And in the late 80s and early 90s, it certainly did that, straddling around the sort of it sort of sat around when grunge was taken off, metal had sort of died back, and people were looking at different textures, not like sort of crazy hair metal stuff that was coming around prior to that. And so, as I said, born from like Killing Joke and Peel and those sort of latter day, sort of later punk bands. From the UK and around the late 70s, early 80s. We get some interesting bands. Now, as I said, the band I mentioned before was Ministry. I'm going to say is Ministry. That's the band that I kept a bit of a secret. So my favourite of the industrial scene is Ministry. Now, they're quite sort of like the industrial supergroup, if you know. I mean, they're sort of like the along with Nine Inch Nails and Pitch Shifter, they're sort of the face of industrial music. Now, I first listened to their first album and I was like, what is this electronic synth pop? So I was sort of like, oh no, not for me. And I suddenly found out consequently, years afterwards, that they were sort of asked to make that album and it's not something they wanted to do, which is really, really interesting, because obviously they wanted to the lead singer Al Jorgensen, who is an extremely interesting character. He is a genius sampler, okay, and he said he loves using his Fairlight, which is like the equivalent back then. It was like the sampling tool that everyone wanted. It's very, very expensive and in the millions, and to get one you didn't usually have one. You usually hired it from the studio, or you use another band's one. Like Peter Gabriel had one from Genesis, and it was one of the only ones in the country, and it was worth an absolute fortune. Now, a couple of albums later, they produced an album which I considered to be the pinnacle of the industrial metal scene, and it has never really been surpassed in my mind, even with classic albums by Nine Inch Nails and Trent Reznor, who was very much like Jorgensen, like a one-man band. But Land of Rape and Honey is the album that I'm talking about now. It's quite a stark and confronting name, but you can see where this sound is coming from, where you can see where his direction is going by the name of the record. Okay, so it was released in 1988, a year before my other favourite of their albums, which is The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste. But A Land of Rape and Honey, it's a really interesting album because it's quite a long album for its time. It's 46 minutes, which is, this is pre-CD, or sort of at the edge of CD, I suppose, beginning of CD. It has a real later Killing Joke sound. Like So if you know the band album, like the first Killing Joke album, or even something like Extremities, Dirt and Feel For, or maybe even Hosanna but these albums they're much later than this, but there's somehow they've sort of become similar sounds, but you find a lot of the tropes that from industrial music come from this album. The single named tracks, a lot of them, really hard and interesting pieces of music. It doesn't really ease up all the way through the 46 minutes. There's not a point where you can take a breath, to be honest with you. Now, Jurgensen said that up until this album, he'd been a guitarist mainly, and he'd been so into his sampling and his keyboards that when he was in a studio and he heard the guitarist playing a riff for this particular album, he realized he fell in love with the sound of a Gibson again through a Marshall stack. And so in come the guitars, a much harder, a heavier guitar sound. This is why, for me, this is the pioneering album of the genre. I'm sure I could be wrong. Industrial nuts out there who are more into it than me may reach out and say, no, you're wrong, Tone, but this is how I look at it. Now, it's made up of several tracks. You've got Stigmata, The Missing, Deity, Golden Dawn, Destruction, Hezbollah, The Land of Rape and Honey, You Know What You Are, Who You Are, I Prefer, and Flashback and Abortive. Now, they're quite hard-hitting sounds to you. There's some really interesting, like Stigmata opens with this incredible sort of heavy bass drum sound with really interesting sort of jabs of vocal and sonic sampling mixes in, which sort of really, if you close your eyes and think you could be in that kind of heavy factory scene, but it is also very much like being in a club, like a dance club, right? That sort of extreme music that some people listen to now that I often say is awful, but when I think about it, it's very similar to what this is, to be honest with you. It just has more of a message than just a load of beeping noises. Then The Missing is, again, it's got a very interesting lyric to it. Again, the lyrics in ministry songs are not something that you could hear straight away. You do need to sit down and read them, and you have to sort of take in, because it gets overshadowed sometimes by the power of the mix, the back mix, the drums, the bass, the sampling, the speed and the pace of it. They're not traditional lyric staves, right? So you don't go chorus, verse, chorus, verse. They will punctuate each track in different parts, and sometimes you lose track of what they're saying. Like, this one is it's basically about someone who's looks like it's about running away, and someone losing, a family losing out on a family member because it took them for granted. They go missing, because the people who love them didn't show that they love them, or understood that this person was going through something hard. All right. So again, these are messages that are not like pop, rock and roll. They are what this music tends to draw to. You can't write this kind. You can't make this kind of music and have a kissy, lovey, hold your hands kind of concept. You also can't chuck in pseudo black mass devil worshipy things, because it isn't going to work. It isn't about that. It's something beyond that. It's beyond the. It's much more modern than the ancient evil of the devil, if you know what I mean. It's much more dark satanic mills of the north. It's much more clanging smoke and chains, right? This one here, Deity, is interesting. This is an anti-Christian song or an anti-religious song, because deity can mean any of your chosen religions. Great sort of lyrics, like it says, help, what's the matter, looking for someone, he comforts me, my deity, resurrection is coming in stereo, if you say so. Let's pray for TV divinity. So like, again, it's about the fakeness of, you know, your typical TV evangelists, right? I mean, they're an American band, and so they, you know, America, particularly the heartland of America's, as you know, dear Americans, you know, there are parts of your country that are very, very religious, and that's fine, you know, but it can be a little bit overbearing for some people that are not used to that, and that's all right, because there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just something that people see as a falsehood if you're particularly religious, and people like Al, I mean, do they mean it, or do they want to be confronting? Sometimes I have my doubts, you know. I have my doubts a lot with a lyrical content of some stuff, because, you know, it's easy to come across as someone who's being, hey man, I'm anti-Christian, I'm anti, you know, organised religion, when they really don't think that. It's just a good way of selling a record, filling a space. And I'm not saying that every time that you write a lyric you have to genuinely believe everything you write, but sometimes you sort of do listen to these lyrics and go, I don't know, you know, I'm not sure. And then of course it's not until you sort of read more about them and about their lives and understand more about them that you realise that, yeah, they probably do mean where they're coming from, you know. But most of the time it's good to have a little bit of doubt on you, right? And then we go to Golden Dawn. Now, all this music, it's very difficult for me to describe the music here, because it's almost virtually impossible to do so, because it all I can say is it's a mix of heavy bass and drum rhythms, heavy repeated chorus guitars, distortion guitars, no solos, little sharp angular bits of guitar notes thrown in, little bass loops coming in, little vocal nuances that are recorded and then twisted and repeated in the choruses. It is a miracle of design, industrial design, in fact. And Golden Dawn is, I think, is one of my weakest songs on the album. It's not something that I really enjoy that much, but you know, it has its moments. Okay. With then we move on to Destruction. This is when it gets really heavy, and lyrically it actually gets pretty intense. Now I hear the voices and I know the speculation, but I am the decider, and I decide what is best, and what's best is death and destruction. You go to war without a care in the world, no matter what the cost. Must be a reason for all this treason. It never mattered if we won or lost. I mean, yes, it's a bit of a schoolboy, you know, rhythmic, lyrical device, but it works in this type of music, because this type of music is that kind of music. It is repetitive, rhythmic, so it sort of works within the drum and bass loop sounding that you get with this particular album. And then you get to a really, really interesting one. Okay, now I'm not even going to attempt to describe this song too well, because it's something that sort of made me feel very uncomfortable listening to, even back then, before all the troubles that, of 9/11. It's called Hezbollah, and it has a lot of Arabic sounding loops in it. It sounds like there's prayer, Muslim prayer in there. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's what it sounds like. And it's very intense, very, very intense, and I don't quite know where it's coming from or where it's going. I don't know whether it's something to cause controversy or something to just, I don't know. It's an interesting piece of music that I often, and to be honest with you, I skip, because of all the bits of music on this album, and some Ministry stuff, particularly, you know, tracks off of The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste, can be quite disturbing, and I think this is one of them. So And it's only because of, since 9/11, prior to 9/11, I probably wouldn't have felt anything about this, but for some reason it makes me feel uncomfortable. And then we go into the title track, Land of Rape and Honey. Now, Land of Rape and Honey is an in my opinion, it's an anti-corporate, anti-money song, okay? It's an to some extent, an anti-American. Like, I don't mean anti-American, don't get angry about that. I mean the sort of image that America portrays itself sometimes. I think that's the feel. I think it's about the removing of the Native Americans from, or the first Americans from their homeland. You can see the lyric is face to face, blood to blood, the mountain you tumbled from, and in the land of rape and honey you pray. Step by step you climb the mountain, you pray. Fist to fist, eye to eye, the rulers of the wasteland, in the land of rape and honey you pray. Step by step they climb the mountain. Which country is the very best? And in the land of rape and honey you pray. I read into that it's about the take of the land, because it's the land of rape and honey. But also I think it's very much an anti-capitalist track, which sits perfectly in Al's wheelhouse there, and in the music's wheelhouse, because it is confronting, and it is it will get you moving. I mean, in a strange way. People are not, I don't want to make it sound like it's not easy listening, because it really does make you move. There's a point where I've been to Melody Killing Joke gigs and ministry gigs, and when you go, there's a moment where you become almost in that tribal mode. You don't have to take any hallucinogens or anything like that. You don't even have to drink alcohol. You just need to be in the mix, and you just get this, you get drawn up into the rhythms of the music and the power of the moment. And I think that's what makes industrial music for me so fascinating. And then we move on to, after that very hard-hitting piece of music, we go, you know what you are. Okay, again, these are very difficult to describe. So I'm going to go over the lyrics. Okay, you know what you are. Don't try to reason. No words. I've seen it all before. Don't cry because it's too late. We'll make some people. That's all they need to get home. Now look into my eyes. I've seen the light. You know what you are. No star starts in the west. The star starts in the west. We have until we cry. Last time we offer is going to slaughter out his covered eyes. I don't understand. I mean, I'm reading this, right, and I've listened to this song for years, and I have absolutely no idea. I generally only get in to the lyric when it gets to ignore the pain, ignore the terror. We saw the tears lost in their eyes. You know what you are. No, you know what you are. No. I'd say again, it's probably about self-reflection. It's probably about, again, corporate madness. I mean, don't cry, it's too late to make why we make some people, that's all they need to get home. I mean, I'm not quite sure, Al, what you were talking about, but interesting. If you ignore the lyric on that, it makes to me no much sense. You are going to enjoy this. It's a very crazy piece of music, right? And then we get into I Prefer. Now, this is actually my second favourite track on the album. It's a really, again, quite a line in the sand kind of track. Have you run into the human race? Have you run into the world? Have you run into the system? And I raise the white flag. And that's the way I prefer flagellation. I love the way he sort of spits out the word flagellation. After that, I prefer flagellation, and I raise the white flag. So basically, he's just saying that I like submitting. All right, I'm happy to, happy for you to dominate me, or to be dominated. It's again, this is where the album starts to get a little bit dark. It was dark before. It starts to get dark now. The next track is, you think this is dark, you wait till you hear the next one, and again, this has that kind of interesting looped spit of track. It really spits, and it really has this sort of constant sampled guitar piece, which really I find fascinating. The lyric aside, the music is pretty fascinating. So then we move on to our flashback. I'm going to be this is warning here, I'm not going to read the lyric out to this, because I don't want to get taken down. But it's basically about if you've known anyone that's taken heavy amounts of drugs, and I have in my past known people to have what we call flashbacks. A friend of mine used to take a lot of LSD, and he would get quite a fair few flashbacks. So he would come down and be normal, and suddenly just flash straight back into his hallucinations. And this particular track is lyrically very, very demanding. I'm going to give you a warning here, please. If you are sensitive to violence, particularly violence towards women, this track will make you uncomfortable if you listen carefully to the lyric. If you are willing to dive into it and not take it as some kind of misogynist power trip, you're going to find out that basically it's about a man who's been rejected by his girlfriend / wife / partner, and during his flashbacks he's going through these motions of violence, anger towards that particular person. It is quite confronting lyrically, and I won't deny that that it wouldn't get made these days. It probably wouldn't even get played these days. Not in the woke world we live in, but it is what it is. Art can be controversial, and not all controversy is deliberate. Sometimes it is is accidental. Sometimes it's deliberate to create a synergy, a moment for you to shock you, to understand the underlying story or concept of the moment. And I think this particular track does that. So I'm not going to hang around too long on that, because that one again is quite tricky. But we finish on Abortive. Sounds horrible, and it could possibly be, but it's actually a really intense way to finish the album musically. It really is, and he has very little lyric that spits bits and pieces. It's mainly just rhythm, power, aggression, beautifully mixed and sampled loops. I mean, Al Jorgensen is a genius, a true genius. He's worked with so many people. He's worked with Nine Inch Nails. He's worked with all sorts of people, but it is one of those albums. So for me, Land of Rape and Honey, if you want a true understanding of industrial metal, then this is the place to come. You might not even think it's metal, you might just think it's industrial music, and fair enough, you could do that. But this certainly is, for me, the line in the sand, and where it starts, like truly starts. I mean, you're going to get people shaking their fists at me and saying, but what about Nine Inch Nails? What about their albums? And yes, I'm going to say yes, that they did bring to attention with albums like Broken and Downward Spiral. He did bring towards the latter 80s and early 90s. That was, if you were listening to industrial music, really, that was the band that you were listening to, because he's extremely gifted musician, but he's also a very, very good businessman and a very good promoter of his music, and he sort of found a space for his side of music. Rammstein is another one. I don't really enjoy Rammstein. They are very industrial because of the Teutonic aspect of it. I find it a little bit one-dimensional, and I don't mean that bad to any Rammstein fans, because they are wonderful musicians. It's just I find it a little bit too one-dimensional. They don't add enough texture into their work for me to make it as exciting as, say, Nine Inch Nails, or even Pigface, which was formed by Martin Atkins, drummer of Peel, would you believe, and Killing Joke. He's played for Nine Inch Nails, and he's also drummed for the Ministry. Okay, and he's Pigface was that sort of, how do I say it? It was probably it's not easy listening industrial. In fact, if anything, it can be quite confronting. But it's it's probably easier for you to find these days. Although, hang on one second, my computer's locked. God, I hate when it does that. I've got to change the settings on this thing. My brain goes elsewhere. So yes, so Pigface, okay, and along with Pitch Shifter as well, that formed in 1989. They're sort of like the underground aspect of the industrial scene. There are so many other bands in the genre that I could really point fingers at. You know, Godflesh, Nine Inch Nails, as I said. Big Black is another one that was really big in the movement early on. Godflesh, self-titled EP, it sort of came out at the same time as Land of Rape and Honey, and that is another one of those ones that sort of could be considered a seminal album EP. I think it's pretty. I think it's actually too hard to listen to for me. It's one of those ones where I have tried and I couldn't get into it. Whereas Ministry's Land of Rape and Honey and The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste are sort of they're accessible in levels, and they're shocking in levels, and they're listenable and danceable, in fact, in levels that a lot of the other underground industrial stuff, i.e. Pigface and Throbbing Gristle and those sort of things, were not really, you know. I heard a great quote, actually, and the quote says here that Ministry were like Land of Rape and Honey was like the Cure's proper pornography era, but on Quaaludes, mixed in with a large dollop of Black Sabbath. There are subgenres off of industrial, like noise rock, which would have bands like White House, power electric music. So like it's very ravey almost in some extent, but truly, if you're going to jump in to try and get your head around it, you could start with Nine Inch Nails. Yeah, you could, because it's accessible and you can find their stuff anywhere. But firstly, I'd start really well. I'd start with Killing Joke. Listen to which Killing Joke would I think? Well, let me think. I'd probably say the first album, to be honest with you. I think you don't get much more intense than Killing Joke's first album, self-titled. I'd say industrial music really pays a big homage to tracks like The Weight and things like that. That I think that are looped almost in a sound system. I think you're going to start there, then possibly any of the first 3 Peel albums, absolutely, Metal Box even, and then you can go on to Land of Rape and Honey. You can go on to anything like Nine Inch Nails, Godflesh, Pigface. But these are some. I'm going to name some honourable mentions, okay? And there might be stuff that you might not have heard of, but they are bands that really sit very heavily inside the genre of particularly of the mid-90s. There's a band called Stabbing Westward. Interesting name, isn't it? Formed in 94. They're sort of basically a band that's searching for an identity that really struggled, but they've made some really delicious tracks and with great records in Winter, Blister Burn, and Peel, and Darkness of Days. They're worth having a listen to. I quite like them. And then White Zombie, of course, with Rob Zombie. Would I call that an industrial metal band? Probably, maybe with Astro Creep from 2000. It's a mishmash. I don't know whether it's more grunge than grunge and industrial mix, but yeah, worth having a listen to. I'm trying to think. The Revolting Cocks now. What a great name! What an absolute great name! And they are really that punk sound that Al Jorgensen has played with them. He's a former member of Front 242 and so on, and they made some interesting pieces of music. They had diverse records: Big Sexy Land, Beers, Steers and Queers, Linger Freaking Good. I mean, these are the fun, lighter side of the industrial scene, I would say. Throbbing Gristle, as I mentioned before, started in the 70s, very much sort of weirdly a sort of jazz fusion. They did use a lot of unfortunate imagery, i.e. Nazi imagery and stuff, not because they're neo-Nazis, but just because I think to shock. Just the way that Sid Vicious wore a swastika on his arm, it was more basic shock than anything else. But if you can ignore that, they make some really hard, confronting music that could be considered proto-industrial. Fear Factory, again, I've seen Fear Factory, and I saw them in the early days, and I do get them sort of mixed up a little bit with Nine Inch Nails in the fact that they are sort of the easy listening of industrial, I would say. That sounds really poor to you Fear Factory fans. I'm not trying to put you down, it's just I find it that way. They use a lot of the computerized aspects of industrial, a lot of sampling. Classic album that you should listen to for them is Demanufacture and Obsolete, both brilliant albums if you want to go into them. Let's have a look here. Just wrote notes here. Killing Joke, as I mentioned, we're not going to go there. Skinny Puppy, now they're a band that I didn't really think of until recently. They're very much in the same like as Ministry. You could easily see them on the same bill. The Canadians, they're both very musically and visually gifted band. Got quite a reputation live. Brilliant lyricist, very hard-hitting albums. Vivisection 4 and Too Dark Park. Again, don't jump into those too easily, my dear friends. You might want to come at that at a later time when you're a bit more conditioned to the type of music that's coming out. Okay. Godflesh, as I mentioned before. Marilyn Manson, look, he throws himself in the industrial scene. I'm going to say, look, you can go there and you can sort of find it, but for me, he's more just your sort of goth sort of stuff, really. Rammstein, as I mentioned, not something that I tend to enjoy, but hey, it's there for you if you like it, Nine Inch Nails, as I also mentioned. I'm trying to find an interesting one as well is Strapping Young Lad. That was thrown into the industrial genre for a little while. That's the Devon Townsend band. I don't know whether I would call that industrial metal. I really don't. I think it's more your sort of hardcore. But hey, it's in that. It gets chucked in that genre. A lot of things do get chucked in. They hear something sounds similar, let's chuck it into the genre, but that doesn't mean it is. So that's a strange one. But I think if you stick to the ones I've mentioned, as I said, Skinny Puppy, be careful. Revolting Cocks, be careful. If you're not fans already, you might find it too confronting. Musically, though, most accessible, as I said before, would be Rammstein. It will be Nine Inch Nails with Trent Reznor's epic band. But if you really want to give a dive into it and you want to take a leap, then Land of Rape and Honey and The Brain is a Terrible Thing to Taste, the album after that. Both of those Ministry albums are epic and they are well worth a dive. So enjoy industrial, or if you haven't listened to it before, if you have, do sort of reach out and tell me if I've missed anything. I know I have, I always do. Remember, I've only got a short period of time to get it across, but if you ever get a chance to see any of these acts live, I'd certainly give it a go, particularly Killing Joke, particularly Ministry, because they really will open your eyes to a different way of listening to music, particularly live. It takes you out of that typical long hair, guitar solo, chorus verse chorus metal that we all so love and used to, and it takes you to a different place, and it might even open your eyes to even more wonderful realms of music. You might even end up enjoying a bit of dub or reggae or sampled music or anything, you might just open your eyes a bit more and give you a different avenue to explore. It did it for me anyway. That's enough for me this week. Please do like and subscribe. Please do give me a review. Every review I get on Spotify and on iTunes and on YouTube as well now gives me more access to more listeners. So I want to spread the word more, and I want to grow the show. So please do that. It'd be great. Anyway, that's enough for me this week. Go and get yourself a copy of that album that I just mentioned. I've said it several times. I won't say it again. And give yourself a real treat. Bye for now.